Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura have played 1,000 different times. They've played many games, but today we'll see the best game they ever played, at least according to me. This game was played many years ago, like 10 years ago, in Tata Steel, and Carlsen was playing with the white pieces. The game started with a Najdorf Sicilian, at f6, knight c3, and a6. I'm sure most of you know this opening, right? Kasparov, Pecher-Lagrave, Carlsen, Naka, all the great players in the world at some time ever played this opening, trying to play for a win. Carlsen continued with the move bishop e2 and now e5 from Hikaru Nakamura. You know, in Najdorf you have to decide if you play with e6, with e5. Sometimes you can even play with g6, but e5 is nowadays the most common way to play. Knight b3 and bishop e7. So the position with e5 usually are a bit more solid than with e6, because once black played with e6, you usually keep more pieces, there is less weaknesses, and also it's easier for white to change some pieces. So this is like the solid way to play Najdorf. And now Carlsen played a really subtle move, which is the move bishop e3. Bishop e3, you might think, okay, what is the point of bishop e3? If you are going to just short castle anyway, why are you giving me this information that you can also bring the bishop to e3? So the whole point of bishop e3 is that now white is also sometimes wanting to castle long, so you keep both options open, and this way it's a bit harder for black to figure out what you want to do, right? In this game, actually, Naka continued with a move that is nowadays considered as an accuracy, which is the move short castle. It's not good because now white can play g4, g5, attack the black knight, I mean, put it in a worse situation, and now you have a good control over the center. Nowadays, it's considered better to play bishop e6 first, so if white try to do the same, you have time to break on the d5 square, and then everything is changed on the center. So after castle, Carlsen now used this important tempo to play g4, and now the key is that after bishop e6, I play g5, I attack the knight, and now the knight will not be controlling d5 anymore. So now there is no break on d5, and I can just keep developing the pieces. Magnus continued with h4, just defending the pawn on g5 and keep developing slowly the pieces. Knight b6, trying to bring the knight to c4 at some point, and now simply queen d2. Obviously, now that we have played h4 and g5, our king side is extremely weak, so we have to go to the queen side with our king. So queen d2 is normal, knight a d7, and f4 for Magnus Carlsen. Of course, it's also possible to play long castle first, but maybe Carlsen was a bit annoyed about some rook c8 followed by knight c4. I really think it doesn't make such a big difference, but he decided to play, of course, f4, ef4, and bishop f4. One of the keys of the f4 idea, because it's easier to think that, okay, but what is the point of f4? Because now black gets a really nice spot on e5, and I don't really get why did I play f4? How is this f4 gonna help me in any case? So there is different ideas of why f4 is actually a good move for white. One of them, and probably the easier to understand, is that now we have a really nice square on d4, which might be very helpful for our knights, and it will be attacking the division. It can go to f5, and it will be controlling a lot of very important squares. Also, a very important idea is that it's clearing the second file, which means that every time black wants to play some knight c4 and you will take it, then your queen can go to g2 or h2 trying to attack the black king. For instance, after long castle, rook c8, now usually it's recommended when you play long castle, and before you start any attack, sometimes you can just play king b1, just stay calm, stay chill with your king on b1, everything is very solid, and you don't have to really hurry. And now Naka continue with queen c7. Why is Naka not playing knight c4 yet? Well, you can play knight c4, probably Carlsen is going to take, and now you have to decide whether you want to put your queen on g2, or whether you just want to play queen d3 and then keep attacking with your pawn. So queen c7, black is keeping that option totally open, and at some point, of course, you have to do something with white, and h5 comes. So if you look at the position, actually it looks very dangerous for both. white is trying to attack with the pawns, black is trying to attack with the pieces. Why? Well, basically we only are attacking with this g5, h5 pawn. We have to break somehow with g6 or with h6. And black is doing the same, but he's attacking with the pieces. He wants to put the knight on c4. First, Naka played the move rook e8, which is a very helpful move for the future. The idea is that, well, you will probably be able to put your bishop on f8 at some point, and this will help you to control a lot of important squares, especially if whites want to play some g6 at some point and you want to play h6. If you have the bishop on f8, then this sacrifice on h6 will be much harder to be played, right? So now Carson decides to play this very funny move, king a1. What is the point of king a1? Why this move, right? What is the point? So let's imagine that black plays knight c4 now, right? Takes, and for instance, I want to play queen d3. So there is this extra option of giving a check on a3. Then at some point can be annoying. Then the knight can go to c2 or even to b5 in some situations. Depends where you go with the king. Trying to open up a bit more the position. And with king a1, you basically are out from that check. That is actually the main idea. The game continued with bishop f8, and now finally white get to play knight d4. So after knight d4, I'm already threatening in some situations to take on e6, and you have to actually evaluate if you want me to take your bishop, if you don't want me to take your bishop. So for now, you cannot really move it, because if you go, for instance, to c4, then the f5 square also gets weaker, and I can continue with d6, and then some knight f5, and this guy is definitely doing really, really badly. So you have to create some counterplay, and that's why Naka tries to bring his queen closer to the king. He wants some queen b4, some knight c4, and basically some counterplay here on the queen side. The game continues with g6. Of course, with white you also cannot really wait. You have to open up everything and try to create a lot of counterplay on the king side. And now Naka decided to bring his knight to c4. So here actually is a very important moment, because it's very nice to see how Carson doesn't really take on h7, but he actually evaluates as more important to keep the tension, since keeping the tension might mean that at some point you can play h6 and really open up everything. Because if you actually take on h7 now, black is going to do something you call like the friendly pawn. You are not going to take the pawn, but you are going to keep it there. Why? Because now the h file is completely closed. Now the only weakness is g7. And if you play h6, you are going to try to close. Well, of course, the queen is hanging. But, I mean, if you move the queen first and then, well, let's say you play some bishop e7, h6, you can always close with g6. So this is like the idea, trying to close everything like that. And that's why you don't really want to take on h7, but you want to play h6 and then take, and then everything opens up. So the game continues with bishop c4, knight c4, and queen d3. So it's important to bring the queen to d3 to defend this guy on c3. If you play something like queen g2, you have to be careful with some knight b2 idea, and if king b2, then queen c3 check, and this is totally a disaster. So that's why you bring the queen to d3. So you defend this guy. And if he takes, now you can take, and the queen is simply defending the knight. So the point now is that you cannot really wait so much more with black. If you play some move like, I don't know, b5, I don't take here, because again, if I take king h8 and I try to open up like this, black is actually allowed to close the position like that. So the whole idea is to open up everything with h6. And you might think, okay, but he will take, and then if you take, and take here, everything will be, I mean, the bishop will start attacking. Yeah, that's true, but actually I can delay a bit this g7. I can play some queen h3 first, and then when I take, I bring my queen to h7, and all the files are open, and this is extremely important to be able to proceed with the attack. So the game continues with fg6, hg6, and h6. That's here we see the idea of why Naka actually played so many moves ago, rook e8 and bishop f8. So he's able to play h6 without getting destroyed, at least for now, with some bishop h6 in the position. And now Carson played queen g3. The queen on g3 is extremely well placed because it's still defending the knight on c3. So okay, still knight b2 is not really a move because I can simply take it back and the knight still defended. But also it's starting to look closer to this king on g8, which means some ideas like bishop h6 followed by g7 might not be working yet, but they are starting to be more and more and more dangerous, and at some point they will actually work. So the game continued with queen b6, trying to kill some counterplay on b1, and now Carson played bishop c1. So by doing that, actually black managed something, but also white managed something. Black managed that since b2 is under attack now, you cannot really sacrifice on h6 anymore, at least till you defend this guy on b2. But also now you cannot play b5, so let's say black contemplates a bit slower, because if you don't move this knight from c3, it will be really hard for you to get any kind of counterplay. And also you have some idea with white, which might be some b3, bishop b2 at some point. Now queen a5 comes, and now it's clear that you have to be careful here, no? This guy's looking here, this guy's looking here, this guy's looking here. So everything looks like something is very dangerous. But actually Carson doesn't care. He just played rook f1. And it was important to calculate here, because it might seem that knight b2 is winning, because after bishop b2 and rook c3, you attack the queen, you take the defender from a2, and now, well, if you take queen a2 will be mate. But the whole idea of Carson was that you can simply take on e6 and nothing happens. Then you can take on b2, there is no guy attacking a2 anymore, so it's not really happening. But to be honest, really cold blood to play rook d f1 here. So if you see the position now, queen is looking, rook is looking, rook is looking, bishop is looking, and knight is pretty close. So it's already getting quite bad for black. Naka now tried to bring his knight closer, also helping to defend the black king, and also threatening now rook c3. So you have to do something about it, and what Carson does is you sacrifice a pawn with knight e5. It doesn't really matter the pawn, but the key now is that there is no piece attacking this guy. I mean, the queen's still looking, but the queen for itself will not do any damage to the white king, and now all the other pieces are attacking the black king. The queen, the rook, the other rook, the bishop, and this guy who will jump to f5 quite soon. And now Carson calculates everything and brings the first brilliancy to the game with bishop h6. So the key of bishop h6 is that, well, of course you want to open up all the files. And black could take the knight, but the idea is simply to bring back the bishop to e3. I attack the queen, and if queen g4, we have this beautiful mating idea that I'm sure some of you have seen at some point. Rook h8, I bring the king to the h file, then I bring my queen with check to h7, and the game will be finished. And that's why black has to take on h6, and g7 comes. Another sacrifice. So the idea of this sacrifice is that basically if you take on g7, then I finally bring my knight to f5. I attack on g7, I'm also threatening knight h6, queen g7, rook h6, and everything is impossible to defend. I mean, it's already very hard to defend g7. You could try rook c7, but then I simply take here, you move your king somewhere, and okay, knight g4, king here, knight f6, and I take your queen. So black has to play bishop e7 and use this friendly pawn that is not so friendly anymore to basically be able to close this g file. But now the problem is that the rook is coming to h6 and rook h8 is made. So you have nothing left but to play knight f7 and now queen g6. Sacrifice the rook, you have to take it, and then I take with the queen. I'm back to threat queen h8 mate, so you have to cover somehow the f file. I'm a full rook down right now, but it's too late for black already. Bishop f6 came. The idea is that, well, if you take with the rook, then there is some mate here, and if you take with the queen, then, okay, it's a bit slower to bring mate to h8. It's probably winning anyway, but it's a bit slower. But Carson Jack calculate everything till the end. Check, only move king f7, check, only move take, check, only move the king, and check on e1. And now Nakamura had to resign. If you move your king to d7, it's simply mate on e7. And if you place your rook or your queen on e5, I can simply take it, and then after king d7, play some move b3, and I'm piece and pawn up in a completely winning endgame. So that was a game, extremely complicated game, and for me, probably the best game that Carson and Hikaru Nakamura has ever played. If you believe there is some other game that they ever played that was better than this one, tell me in the comments, tell me which tournament was it, and I will commentate it in the channel. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you on the next one.